Here we go. So thank you all again for joining us tonight. Like I already said, it's so great to see you all and put faces to your names. So welcome to Turmoil and Transformation, our night of artist talks. I have to say, for me, this has just been incredible to put up. Being so stuck in like our homes for over a year now, and seeing everyone's works from across the country, and Sybil Archibald, who just said hello to us, her piece, "You Are Not Alone," I think really stands out as a work and as a title here, and is evident in the show that we are not alone, that we've all been through this together. So thank you all for participating and submitting work and being here tonight. Here's a view of some of the exhibit that we have. And I'd like to introduce our juror, Francine Weiss, for picking these pieces and putting this together, and give you a few minutes to speak.
Okay, I'm just unmuting. Hi, everybody. I'm Francine. Thanks so much for having me, Sonia. It's good to actually see you. And I just gave my first in-person tour today, and I realized I don't know how to be in person. Even though we've been open at the museum pretty much all along, I haven't had any in-person tours or talks. So it's like, but my Zoom mojo is good, so I should be okay with this one. Thanks everyone for being here and also for submitting. I really enjoyed looking at all of the work. I know I could only select, a small group of works, but I really love seeing everything, especially because as a curator, the studio visits really dried up quickly with COVID and shows closed. And I started doing more and more jurying and online work just to see things because I wasn't circulating as much as I wanted to. So Sonia asked me to read my jurying statement, which I will do. I'll try not to make it sound too robotic as I read it on my screen. It was an honor to jury the Hera Gallery's Turmoil and Transformation exhibition. Founded in 1974, the Hera Gallery has a history of giving voice to women artists and artists from underrepresented groups. It has broadened its mission to show artists of all genders, regional and national, and at different stages of their careers, but the core values of supporting artists, encouraging important conversations, and ensuring that there's diversity in the art world are still alive and well. It was a pleasure to see such a diverse array of submissions to this call. The entries varied in medium, subject matter, style, process. What they all shared in common, though, was engagement with what's happening in the world right now, such as the terrible and unfathomable human cost of COVID, the dire need for social justice, equality and equity, political protest and transition, an abiding interest in nature and concern for climate change, and social distance and bonds that were forming. I was fascinated by repeated motifs in the entries, the prevalence of birds, the use of language and words in art, landscapes both real and imagined. Not all works explicitly reference contemporary issues. Some simply captured a mood or feeling. And still other works of art were humorous and hopeful. Perhaps this is the transformation part of transformation and turmoil, the possibilities for self-awareness and renewal. All art into turmoil and transformation, but also for continuing to make art during this challenging time. Thank you for making this work for yourselves and also for sharing with me and others.
Thank you so much, Francine. Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to go through alphabetically the works of the artists in this show. And if you're here and told me you were speaking, I wrote down your name and I'll introduce you and your work, and you can say what you need to say. So first we have Anna Altman from Rhode Island. She actually just published a book. She is not here with us tonight. This is a piece from her older collection, A New Year for Trees. And this is the first piece that's hung in the gallery as well, and the first piece alphabetically, which worked out nice. And next we have Sybil Archibald from New Jersey, You Are Not Alone.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Okay. All right, great. So thanks for having me as part of the show. And I'm an artist who works in a lot of different mediums. I work painting, sculpture, but for the past 3 years, I've been focusing primarily on printmaking. And this piece is a monotype, which is a one-off print. Most forms of printmaking, you're able to do an edition, but a monotype is a singular image. And it's part of my project, the Monotype of the Day project, where I did one monotype every day, no matter what, whether I was traveling, whether I didn't want to, whether I was in the hospital, no matter what, for 900 days, I did a monotype. And the purpose of the project was to explore the inner life of the artist, what it's like to be alone in the studio and to deal with the mistakes and the failures, the moments of inspiration, the successes, and the spiritual growth and change that happens inside the artist as this goes on. So I chose monotype as a medium because it's very immediate and it captures what's going on in that moment. And so the title of the piece is You Are Not Alone, and it's about my feeling of being in the studio and never feeling lonely, feeling so deeply connected to this sort of well of creativity that I see everywhere in the world, in the grass, in our lives. Every place you look, every moment of change is a kernel of creativity. And in this particular piece, the figure is hanging upside down. And to me, that's a moment of surrendering to the process of creativity, which I see as being this universal process that's everywhere around us. But I also see it as a deeply intimate moment in the studio, sort of a conversation. And the way I'd like to describe it is between myself as an artist with a small a, and with the artist with a capital A, who is the source of all creativity. So these monotypes throughout the series are sort of a capture of that conversation, and the sort of the moment. I find that working, each moment is transformational. Each moment you're forced to change and grow when you're working. And the monotypes are a way of capturing that instant of transformation. And if anybody's interested in seeing the rest of the 900 series, they're on my Instagram, Art of the Sybil. And I guess that's it.
Thank you so much, Sybil. I'll definitely be looking through all 900 of those. Next, we have Sally Binard from Florida. Sally, if you're here, we're ready for you.
I'm here. Hi, everybody. I'm Sally from Key West, Florida. So I am not new to turmoil. Living in the Keys, climate change is one of these issues that definitely affects us, only being, a foot or two above sea level. So several years ago, we had Hurricane Irma. In that same time, I had a car accident and a divorce. So there's the turmoil. And that is the year that my creative practice changed significantly in how I make work. It definitely became more narrative. And so this piece, which is called Liminality, I did for a show called None of the Above, which was exploring the tension between the identity that I have as an individual and being racially ambiguous, the identity that people tend to put on me, because they either don't know what I am, or they just decide I'm not, I am Black, I am white, I'm Puerto Rican, which I'm not. So the whole series of work was about identity. And I had meant for it to be a very universal topic that everyone could relate to. Identity as a mother, as an artist, as a construction worker. I really wanted it to be universal. And then my show got canceled because of COVID and moved several months later. And this was the last piece that I hadn't had finished by the first deadline. It was close, but the COVID gave me, a couple extra months to sit with this piece. And then George Floyd was murdered. And the conversation that I was having with this piece changed significantly. So I'll tell you about the piece real quickly. I'm half Haitian and half Belgian. Most of my history and my family has been dominated by the white side. I know that family intimately. I studied in Europe. And there's a lot of unspoken values placed on race in my family. So in this piece, what I tried to do was come to some sort of resolution of what that looked like in my life. And I use math a little bit in my work. And, you know, I'm half Black and half white. However, in this piece, I wanted to give a little more space to the Black side of my ancestry, since I was denied that. So in my way, it was reclaiming, even if, you know, it's just slightly bigger, but that was just my way of reclaiming that part of me. And I have a picture in the corner of a family member that my mother had sent me. After George Floyd was murdered, I noticed that some of the conversations that I was having, my mother changed. So the transformation part in this piece was what happened as I was sitting in front of this piece. And I'm still going through the transformation part as far as my conversations with myself. So that's pretty much where this piece came from. I am a potter as well.
I was really thinking about Thomas Crowe's essay about Warhol's paintings of death and violence, where he says, "We cannot penetrate beneath the image to touch true pain and grief, but the reality of suffering is sufficiently indicated in the photographs to draw attention to one's own limited ability to find an appropriate response." And so as I was making the piece, I was thinking about how the only images we have of the inside of these facilities are the ones that CBP provide. So essentially how the institution that's committing this violence is also in control of how we see it, and how most of the photos released showed boys of color who, according to the American Psychological Association, are more likely to be perceived as guilty and face police violence when accused of a crime. So thinking about what all of that meant, I wanted to use those images, but to strip them of attributes that any discernible attribute like skin color or gender. So you need to really look at these forms that I've printed to recognize a human figure. But when you do recognize the figure, you see them and you recognize the surroundings, the chain link cages, the mylar blankets. And at the same time, you see your image reflected in the thermal blanket. So my intent was to place you in that situation, and the piece is meant to ask you to consider what that experience is like. And in having that empathetic response, to then begin to question, you know, what kind of protection do we owe each other as human beings, and what would make a human being risk these kind of conditions to cross the border. And then I hope the transformation piece is to begin to think about and imagine alternatives to detention that actually honor human dignity. And the process of making this was a way for me to kind of channel my grief and my feelings of powerlessness to change a situation that is being perpetrated by my government in my name. And I think that art alone can't change the world, but I think that people collectively can. And so I want to highlight the work of organizations like Races Texas and Project Amplify, who advocate for migrants at the border. And also close to home here in Rhode Island, there's Never Again Rhode Island and the Fang Collective, who are out here doing great work to cancel ICE contracts with the state and shut down the Wyatt Detention Center in Central Falls. So I would ask that if you're moved by this piece to, you know, please check out their work and support them. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura. And I want to save all comments and questions and stuff to the end so everyone has their time to share. But I do have to say about this work, you talked about yourself being reflected in the piece, and we have so many portraits in the show right now. And so not only when you're standing in front of this piece do you see yourself, but you see Sally's work behind you and you see Sybil's work behind you. And it's just really
I love that.
amazing.
I
Yeah,
can't wait to see it in person and see everyone's work in person.
thanks so much, Laura. Next we have Harlan from Texas with his Extinction Vessel, #1, Gone Forever. And he's not here tonight, but I can read his piece. It says, Extinction Vessel #1, Gone Forever, has imagery of 4 animals that have gone extinct in my lifetime. Bernard's wolf, Javan tiger, Formosan clouded leopard, and northern white rhino. The haiku reads, here for a reason, but are never coming back. They are gone forever, which you can see in this image here is written alongside. Next, we have Christine Chin, whose work wasn't able to make it to the gallery in person. So we have a digital documentation of her work, Stuffed Storms. So they're stuffed storms from the 2020 Atlantic storm season. So here, this is what is playing in the gallery. We have a quick slideshow of each of her works that would be in the in-person installation. Next, we have Jean Ciravolo from Connecticut, who's here today to share about her work as well. Oops. There we go. She was here. Maybe she didn't make it back in. Sorry, everyone. Trying to participants. Here we go. Okay, it doesn't look like Jean made it back. There we go. Okay. Now our next work is from Lucianna Farone Coccia from Rhode Island as well. What's for Dinner #17. Lucianna was here too.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Lucianna. So this is part of a series. I think I'm up to like 21 right now. I've been working on, and they're all made with trash that I find in public places, mostly on the beach. And so the What's for Dinner series, I make other trash with art, but mostly like abstract, pretty things. This series was really inspired by just global capitalism in general, and climate change, and the fact that we all eat a lot of microplastics. There's a lot of water pollution, food pollution, industrialized farming, and yeah, essentially just wanted to bring attention to capitalism and the way that affects our daily lives, including everything that we eat and drink. So thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Lucianna. Our next is from Jacob Cotton. He has 2 pieces in the show. This top one is called Standing Tall, and the one on the bottom is Through the Eyes of a Nice Guy. For Standing Tall, Jacob wrote, rising above one hopes that the destruction of the past can give a view of a hopeful future. And for this bottom one, Through the Eyes of a Nice Guy, he wrote, nothing clear, nothing simple, only the view through the tears. And I thought these were photographs when I first saw them, and I'm amazed that they're all done with graphite. Our next pieces from Marcus de Cieno. We have 2 pieces as well. The series Surveillance Landscapes investigates how surveillance technology has changed our relationship to landscape in place our increasingly intrusive electronic culture as I hack and tap into surveillance cameras, webcams, and CCTV feeds. Next, we have Debra Disman from California. Toward Entangle, Keep Your House in Order. And I believe Debra is here today as well to talk with us.
Hi, I'm Debra, and I'm very honored to be here with all these other incredible artists and to be seeing a lot of the works closer up. I actually created this piece in 2019, so it was before the pandemic, and it springs from my work working in the form of the book, where I use bookboard and accordion folds to kind of create pleats and movable parts, and then it sort of has evolved into boxes, which are part of the traditional book binding world, but my work sort of diverges from that tradition in terms of it having a conceptual meaning. And it was really speaking to our contemporary overload on every front, and trying to keep all these skeins of our life sorted out. Should we even be trying to do that? They spill out of any sort of structure we try to create. The minute you think you're sort of got things, quote unquote, in order, something else springs up. And social media, I think, has a lot to do with it, but it's also the massive problems and issues going on in the world. And then I feel like the work took on a more salient meaning after the pandemic started, where everything got even further disrupted. I like to work in single colors often, and then have the materials in that same hue speak out in different tones because of their texture, how they're absorbing or refracting light. So it just doesn't feel like there's any end in sight in trying to create coherence. I feel that everyone's really struggling towards that, and we're very, very divided. People have been saying that for a long time, but unfortunately the pandemic has really underlined those divides, in that even if you're wearing a mask or not, or what have you, has become a huge statement. So I use my work to kind of express those things. And sometimes as I'm working or when I've completed something, I'll discover other meanings in it. I tend to use a lot of cord and string and thread, which are traditionally thought of as women's materials and soft materials, kind of juxtaposed with board. So it also speaks to the tension of opposites as well. And I'm thrilled to be involved with the show. Thank you so much for all the hard work you put into this. And it's a real honor to be showing with these other folks, and also to be in a show at the Hera. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Debra. We're so excited to have you as well. Next, we have Sam Dorgan with 2 pieces, At the Moment #1 and At the Moment #3. And I believe Sam is here as well today. maybe not anymore. I don't see her. Maybe she'll come back. Whoops. Next, we have Julie Harris with 2 pieces as well. Premonition. Julie Harris from New Jersey. We have Premonition, which says, my work reflects a personal narrative on my own existence. I use visual poetry to address relationships in my life through metaphor. And we also have from Julie, Purge. This piece deals with the metaphor dirty laundry. The mouth is purging out fears, including abuse, cancer, rape, etc. We have some up close. Next, we have Margaret Hart, who's not with us tonight. She's from Massachusetts with these mixed media collage pieces. Lori Hohen from Virginia, her piece about healthcare. She says, healthcare, how much for how many and at what cost? Does the early bird get the worm, or is there enough for everyone? There are so many answers to these questions, which is right and which is moral. It took me a really long time to see the stethoscope in the glass. Thought it was like a worm for the longest time. Next, we have Heidi Hogden watching Waiting. And I believe Heidi is here today.
Yeah, hi everybody. So nice to be here this evening and see everyone and their artwork. This is so exciting, and be part of the show. So thank you. As a visual artist, I typically look towards environments to understand a relationship between place and identity through drawing and painting. And my work pictures that journey of the artist in different and rather challenging terrains, and the spaces are really physically palpable as much as they are psychologically charged. So this piece, Watching Waiting, not only points to COVID-19 concerns and was made last summer, but it examines the place of the personal in casting myself as the central figure in social isolation. And so, through my work, I'm trying to create a new kind of realism that is not just about how we encounter the world around us, but which depict the struggles that circumscribe the idea of habitation for this generation as well as our future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Heidi. And again, with this one, I think I said about Jacob Cotton's, I can only see these things from Cafe on a little tiny thumbnail. And all I knew was that it was blue. And then when it came in, it was just stunning. Next, we have Joshua Littlefield, Land of Carpet, second set from Maryland. Land of Carpet, second set consists of the following individual pieces: dining room, left, and bathroom, hallway, right. Next, we have Eric McGhie from California, No Man is an Island. I believe Eric's with us. Eric, are you there? We can come back to Eric too. Next, we have Sandison Montgomery from Texas, Year in Review. I think we can all personally relate to this piece as well. Jonathan Murrell from Virginia, The Gift of Courage. We have Stephanie Paine from Louisiana, from her Diver series. She wrote, in this photographic series, diver glimpses of the male figure have been printed as gelatin silver photographs and toned with copper. I considered copper's role in the transmission of energy and the connotation of the male figure depicted in hues of pink and red. Next, we have Haley Prestifilipo from Oklahoma, Evervesting. Another amazing graphite piece. Kim Treadman from Massachusetts, Fault Lines. And I think this is last but not least, we have Gail Winbury from New Jersey. We have a digital documentation of her painting as well. What is this time? I know Gail has some things to share with us as well tonight.
I see my task as an artist to put into visual language what can't be or isn't dared to be uttered in words. And my background is as a psychologist and an artist. So I'm interested in the psychological as it affects us relationally, as it affects us in terms of ourselves, our gender, our community. This piece is called What Is This Time? And the title in part is explanatory. But in my work, and this is a work on paper, it's 58 by 51, I create a tension between the beautiful, lyrical, lush colors that I use with the aggressive, strong mark making. And I want that tension to be there in the piece. This is done on French paper, which is meant for oils, and I did it in my non-pandemic studio, so I was able to work large. My process is to lay some thin layers onto the painting or the canvas, and then to take some charcoal and just make random marks, and those random marks become the structure of the painting. Oh, I forgot to thank people, excuse me just for a minute. First of all, I want to thank people from New Jersey and New York who came tonight to see the entire show. And I want to thank Sonia and Francine for including me in the show. I'm really happy to be part of this. I try and work very closely with the paper and the canvas. I try and not step back for quite a while. I want my emotions, which is part of what I pick up as a sponge from myself and from my community and other people around me, to be directly expressed on the canvas or paper. So it may be hours or days before I step back to analyze the work and look at the formal elements. And when I stepped back to look at this piece, I was a little horrified and scared because I'm an abstract painter and a collagist, and I saw something that was very figurative and monstrous in the painting. And quite frankly, it scared me. And I knew that I had an artistic choice. I could put on some cold wax, layers of cold wax, and I could obscure it, which would make me more comfortable. Or I could say, this is my task as a visual artist, to put into visual language what can't be said aloud. This painting was done in January. It's the final piece of my whole pandemic series. And it was done certainly in response to our quarantine. It was done in response to the election, but more than anything, it was precipitated by the attack on the Capitol. So that monstrous aggressive element was something that I decided had to stay in the painting, and was the truth of the painting, and was the truth of our experience that we shared together. I could tell you more about my process, but I think that I have said enough for now. And we can have a conversation.
Thank you so much, Gail.
Yeah.
And we have our last final piece, which doesn't appear to be, oh, here it comes, from Yoncha from Montana. Succession, a visual score with composer Sherry Feldman and cellist Julia Marks. This is made from dye, locally sourced cedar in Lake Ogallala water, graphite on paper, digital overlay of 2 minutes of MIDI biodata, and recorded from eastern red cedar and mixed prairie grasses directly below its canopy. Anne has to say about her work, because of increased human settlement and changes in fire regimes, eastern red cedar, though native, increasingly outcompetes mixed prairie grasses, an example of forest succession. Succession depicts a series of mixed prairie grasses found on site within the shape of one large cedar. I recorded 2 minutes of biodata of grasses, blue digital overlay, and cedar red from the site using a galvanometer sensor. The biodata is sonified with a multi-track cello recording. Engaging with interpretations of plants and entities and dynamic relationships with their surroundings can contribute to our ability to think more critically about the way we perceive and value novel ecosystems and post-human landscapes. And I'm just going to play this. And that concludes all the artwork we have in the show. So can open it up to some discussion. Feel free to unmute yourselves so you can share.
I just wanted to say one thing, that I think the transformation probably for most of us was the process of creating the work and transforming this time period into something that was new and meaningful.
I was actually curious as to how the curator, how can I put this, like what sort of criteria she established for the work that she wanted to somehow transmit this feeling, you know, of transformation, of trauma, because the works are really diverse, and yet at the same time, together, collectively, they really do communicate something that is very untoward, you know, a sense that somehow what we're encountering is something that is not exactly for. So I found that very interesting. Like, some of you haven't been able to actually walk into the gallery space, but when you do, there's this weird aura that's collectively created from these incredibly diverse artworks. So I think that it's really quite fascinating, you know, how the curator managed somehow to find this, it's like a chord, you know, some sort of a resonance that connects the works, even though they're completely disparate. So I don't know if the curator's here tonight.
I'm right here.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about that?
I know I told Sonia I might have to leave early because I'm not feeling well for my second shot, but I actually stayed because I was enjoying it so much. So I'm still here. you know, I wish I had a really brilliant answer. I mean, I remember going through the entries multiple times. So my job is to be the juror, which means that technically a curator or person has to come in after me and then actually install the show and make it make sense in a space. So my job is like, my day job, I work as a curator and do everything from beginning to end. But at the Newport Art Museum, we also have a juried show. So I have someone else jury, and then I have to make it cohesive and put it together and juxtapose things. So I've done that kind of Tetris of putting works together to make a message. But it might actually be some of my own subjectivity shining through. I did feel when I looked at the entries that I wanted to represent the kind of collective feeling of what had been submitted, to really represent what people were making like at this moment. And I also felt that I wanted to include different media. I did feel like, I'm certainly no like ceramics specialist, but I felt like if I saw strong ceramic work, that should be included. And there's other media that I'm not a specialist in that I wanted to really include because I wanted to kind of show the breadth of what was submitted. And there was a lot of strong work in different media.
Yes.
And I was also really intrigued by the amount we've heard a couple pieces toward the end too, by how much video and sound work there was, which is something I'm working on more at the museum. So I was really interested in that. But there was kind of a feel to a lot of the entries, and I think it's just the theme of the juried show, transformation and turmoil, the way people interpreted that and what they were making. That vibe was kind of already there. And I felt like I was just like almost like you're kneading dough. I was kind of like pulling out parts of it. And I really also wanted a balance of works that were abstract and conceptual, and then things that were more figurative or realist. Because I saw that in all the works as a response to the topic, and enjoyed kind of that interplay. It's always hard with a juried show to make anything cohesive and have like an underlying theme, especially when you're in the jurying platform, you're just seeing images on a screen and you're going through, and there's so many, and you're trying to get a feel, and you often have to go back through all the entries multiple times to really see what you have. There are ways to filter the entries too, so you can actually see what's in any one category or what you've picked. And are you leaning too much toward one thing or too little towards something else? But I thought overall the entries were amazing. It was really hard to limit myself. I mean, you're limited really not by a number, but by the physical space. That's the unfortunate part of the juried show is, you know, you only have so much wall space. And like much as I might like to hang a salon style show from floor to ceiling and include everybody, it's not fair to the people that have made works to crowd things too much. So you really want to like put together a show that's going to make sense spatially. But it was really enjoyable to do. And also like in hearing a lot of you speak, you're from all over the country. And, you know, I really got stuck as a curator in this region and in the state. You know, we had like rules about not leaving the state. Rhode Island was really stringent about out of state people coming in. And, you know, this allowed me to kind of travel to other people's universes, you know, through the computer a little bit. And I just feel like maybe the entries suggested their own cohesion in a way. Plus, I'm sure these are showing my personal taste, you know, in things that are that have depth and layers and texture and conceptual aspects, and certainly like the inclusion of video and sound and mixed media work is probably particular to me, because that's kind of more of what we're trying to do at our museum. We're trying to break into different media and kind of give balance to everything. And it might surprise some people to know that like I started out my career as a photo specialist, but I do everything now in my job. And there weren't actually as many photo-based entries in this show as there might be in some others. So I got to see all kinds of things. And I think also, like, I don't want to talk too much, but there were themes that kept recurring within that transformation and turmoil. Like the focus on climate change, identity, anxiety. There were a lot of people who used language or semiotics or codes in their work. There were a lot of people using symbolism kind of for hope or travel, like birds, and I kept seeing those things over and over, and I was like, oh, there's something in the water or the air right now of how people feel. Anyway, I have not seen the show in person. I'm looking forward to seeing it really soon. I sent a bunch of people that work for me who live in Wakefield are coming into the show soon. Because I think it looks great the way that it's hung too, Sonia. I really, really appreciate that. I love that. Also, that space just looks so clean. I just can't believe it. I love seeing work hung against like a really clean white wall with like clean floors. Like it just looks so like a clean slate, you know, almost with all the work on it.
Well, it's interesting you say that because it definitely is a cleanly hung show, but it's also got this messy quality simply because the work itself is so,
yeah.
You know, there's a lot going on when you go along that clean wall. You know, you're encountering a lot of screams and, you know, complexities. So that it's a really interesting contrast of factors. So yeah, so congratulations to the artists and to you. It's a beautiful show.
I think one thing that's nice is the way it's hung is it looks to me like there's some breathing room around that intensity. So you're getting like one voice and then another voice, and certainly art next to each other influences how we think, but it doesn't feel like overwhelming. It feels like you have a moment to pause with each piece, which I think is really important, which is one reason why you want to kind of make a tight show and not have a lot of stuff, you know, too many things included. And things on a different scale is nice too for that reason.
Yeah.
I think two really big things in this show for me are the component of reflection and then that component of mark making. So it becomes this really like individual and universal thing because I mean, right now on Jean Cervolo's work that we're looking at, the mark making is so strong. But this piece is also really small and it makes it really intimate. But it's also reflected against Laura Lee Brady's piece as well. So all these pieces are in conversation with one another, not just because they're next to each other, but because they're all literally being reflected off of each other, which is kind of amazing because, Francine, that's not something you would know like during these pieces and putting them together. And then like when they come, it's like, oh my goodness. And then, so yeah, I just think that piece, that reflection, that like, that aggressive mark making, that expression, that individual component, and then, oh, your individual component is on me. And like, it's on this piece and it's on this piece and on this person and on this person, and how we're all really unified together in this time. And what is this time?
Yeah, I'd like to say something as president of Hera, who hung a lot of shows at Hera, and as an artist. So this piece Sonia just spoke about was Sonia defended that piece. It's a rather small piece, and there were pieces that popped off the wall much stronger, but she made always sure that that piece would have a good visible space and not just tucked away because you had to look twice before you saw the multi-layer of these pieces. This show was easy to hang, easier than anything I've hung at Hera. I think at Francine, and also I think because the quality of the work was so cohesively high. And for that, I think every artist who participated and submitted, it was like really a consistently good quality of work, which is great. And as an artist, I like to say something. So thank you from all of us for entering. It's very special to us. We are a gallery that tries to really serve the community, and having entries from all over the country in these themed shows that are relevant to all of us, and to see work from beyond Rhode Island is really exciting, and to see our own Rhode Island artists in the middle of that is just as exciting. So thank you very much for contributing work and participating. And Francine, thank you for your choices that are, yeah, fabulous. And as an artist, I'm a big fan of artist talks because it makes the work so four-dimensional. And I think Turmoil Transformation, we, all of us, set in last year, probably in more or less confined circumstances, and did a lot of art or little art or no art. But as artists, even if we did no art, we were still somehow engaged in the creative process. And to hear other people struggle with identity, with the reality of the moment, with sticking out 100 monoprints, like this whole sharing and articulating and sharing the struggle and sharing a product from the struggle and your voice is really incredibly rich. And as an artist, it so validates the journey and makes me, sometimes in the studio, we are really alone. And to see all of you bring this to the fourth year interpretation of this last year creates community and gives me as an artist a sense of belonging that's really valuable. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Sally. I'd like to share something really quick. First of all, I don't know any of you, but it feels very comforting to be in your presence. It's so funny that out of COVID, these Zoom meetings came up, because had we not had this pandemic and the Zoom meetings, I would have shipped my painting off and not flown to Rhode Island because it was cost prohibitive, and just kind of would have wondered what was going on, and maybe seen some pictures on Instagram. And now I get to feel like I share in this experience, and I love sending off my work, and I feel like it builds little relationships, even if I don't see it or know what's going on, but it's like all of our work is in the same space, just trading energy. Right. So I really like that. And as far as transformation at the organization that I'm involved with in Key West, these small groups, I didn't have a big, huge opening exhibition with my show, which actually I liked because I'm kind of a quiet person, but we had small walkthroughs because of COVID. We were limited by, up to 10 people with masks. And the conversations were so intimate and detailed, and we had time to share about our work. And I'm just so great. This is the part I'm grateful for. There's a lot of heartache that came from this, but I'm really grateful for what this has done for my art. To be able to have these talks and to virtually travel to Rhode Island. So I'm grateful for you guys selecting my work and being with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
so much, Sally.
For what you said, Sally.
Any other thoughts? Question?
I have a question for Gail, if she's still practicing psychotherapy, and if she is, has she seen a real uptick during the past year? And if so, how has she work with clients? The format such as this, or perhaps you're not practicing at this point and you're only working on your painting. But
I'll respond. First of all, I want to say that it's rare that I come out as a psychologist. And this is one of the first artist talks where I've been direct about it. Obviously, it informs my work tremendously. I still have a very small private practice. And I'll probably not stop for many years, but very small. People have been suffering enormously. We all know that, but to sit with it has been difficult at times. I think that in January, there is on one hand this sense of relief because it looked as if the vaccines were going to be, coming around and the election was happening. But at the same time, I think people crashed because there had been this year of, on some level, holding it together. And I think my biggest concern, and I think we're very lucky as artists. I think we have thrived much better than most people during the pandemic because we can be alone and we can be creative and make something out of nothing. But I'm concerned that 2 years from now, I think is when people, all of us, are going to just begin to feel what we've been through and really process it. I think we can't right now. I think, we've had to survive and hopefully live, and that it's going to take a long time to make sense of what we've been through. And, obviously it's not just the pandemic. I mean, it's the social unrest, it's the presidency, it's the attack on the Capitol, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for asking, Debra. But I spend most of my time as an artist, but I still have that little hold in my practice. Thanks.
And we don't know how we're going to be transformed, back to the point of the show.
No. And it has changed all of us. I mean, just on a concrete level, I always worked on canvas and I worked really large. But because I was working in my tiny home studio, I started working on paper much smaller than I ever had worked before. And I think that's true for a lot of us, that whether it's materials or content or thinking, that it's shifted how we work.
I just have one other thing to say. I think it's Sally, the artist in Florida. I was so taken with your piece. And on first glance, I thought that yes, I saw conch shells. I didn't, immediately see ceramics. I've been around ceramics all my life because my mother was a ceramicist, but I've done a lot of work around Oshun and the orishas and the symbol of the conch shell. And I thought that was just so fascinating. Whether you see it as shells or whether you see it as tiny vessels or beads, the fact that you kind of see through and that it's on the breasts, just really interesting, especially from a distance when you see the whole piece. To me, I just see those conch shells, which have a mystical association in different cultures. So that's just really, really fascinating. I appreciate what you said.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think one of the most magical things about this painting is when you do see the vessels and getting up close, and because this painting is huge, and at the front it's painted really graphically, in addition to like the mark making in the back, and then you see these vessels and you come up, and then when you get closer you realize how many strokes and moments, and like it's almost like little words. You're using your paintbrush as little words that build up all of these different like people and women and how they came into you. And from it just like really brings someone in to see all these marks, and just all these like your hand, that your hands are on these vessels and like building these small things and putting them together, which is just so beautiful to see.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia.
There's a little bit the feeling of Frida Kahlo in some way. Maybe it's the way the hands are. I didn't realize the scale. I didn't, read that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also just like to address the artist who spoke earlier on her What's for Dinner works, because that piece is so interesting, particularly how it's placed in the gallery, because in contrast to, say, this one that we're seeing, Sybil Archibald, or the beautiful piece we just talked about with the ceramic components, her piece is, found objects, basically, discarded objects, and in this way, ironically, the kind of meticulously crafted fake dishes that are placed in Japanese restaurants often. I don't know if you've seen those before, but if you, at least in Asia, if you go to a Japanese restaurant, they often will have in the windows these, they look completely real, sushis or whatever, but they're made out of plastic. And the way that it's placed on a plinth in the gallery space in between a couple of these very meticulous small paintings, and it takes on this whole other quality. If you see it in isolation, it looks like something that was discarded and picked up. But then when it's formalized in the art space, it kind of becomes something else. And it's a really interesting contrast with the ceramic vessel, you know. So I just wanted to let the artists know that the way it's positioned in the space and the way it's interacting with the other works, it gives it this kind of strange dignity, you know, which is very interesting.
Lucianna, I know you have many of these since this is number 17. Are they all made of found trash? And is the location of where you find the trash important? Do you document that? She's still here. I think she left us. I guess that's a question for another day. I think, unless someone has anything else to say, this has been so great. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight and giving us some more insight on your work. We're up until June 19th. So if you're in the area, or now that a lot of people have vaccines and we can fly, if you're flying up to Rhode Island to come see your show, we're so excited to have you and to see you.
Thank you, Sonia. It's a great talk. Thank you to the artists for your work and to the juror.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.